A visit to the Grand Theater at the start of the OnStage season, live jazz at Musiikki this summer with Firebird Sessions, and a big show and new music from Kasador. All on this month's edition of Kingston Live. Thank you, Kingston, and thank you, Miss Emily, for lending your voice to the Kingston Live theme. I realized we did that a couple of months ago, and we didn't actually thank her publicly for it.
Yeah, she fits perfectly in there. She was I think you mentioned this before, the dream voice to add to the opening credits.
There is no one I would rather have scream at the good people of Kingston than Miss Emily, and it turned out great. And if you catch her on social media, she's been all over the place lately. She's on tour this summer and just killing it.
Yeah. And now we are on a new medium to scream at the good people of Kingston.
The scream is being heard all over the place. Yes, we are now being broadcast. The podcast is broadcast on Amherst Island Radio.
You can hear us on Tuesdays and Fridays on Amherst Island Radio 92.1, I believe, in the frequency.
And it's Tuesday nights at 10 and Fridays at noon. And of course, if you're listening to us on Amherst Island Radio, you already know that. But if you are, yes, we welcome you. Welcome to the Kingston Live podcast. I'm Johnny San.
I'm Riley Jabour.
And this is where we discuss everything happening in the first capital of Canadian music. And of course, we're on the usual platforms that we're on. We're on, Stitcher, Google, Apple, Spotify.
SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio. Anywhere you can find podcasts, pretty much, you'll find us.
Yes.
We're all over the place.
I didn't even know about the tuned-in radio thing until recently.
Yeah, I saw it on a logo that Rob showed us with our stats, and it was like, people are listening on this platform. And I was like, I forgot that app existed, to be honest. So
cool. Well, yeah, obviously, Riley and I are not in charge of distribution of this podcast. That is up to Rob. So thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob. He's the one listening on the TuneIn Radio platform.
So anyway, yes, if you are listening to us on whichever platform, we welcome you, especially if you're new to the podcast. We hope you enjoy it. And I think it's time we introduce our guests. If there was a checklist for making a classic Kingston band, Kasador would tick all the boxes. The core original members formed while attending Queen's University. They got their start playing the university clubs and bars. They have connections to the Tragically Hip. And to top it all off, they even have a song named after Skeleton Park. Kasador, as we know them, took off in 2015, and the band has covered a lot of ground in 4 short years. In 2016, they self-produced the Kasador EP and immediately cut their performance chops, bringing their alt-rock sounds across Canada and the United States. This fall, Kasador will be dropping their upcoming album, Brood and Bloom, a record produced in part by Graham Walsh, who's produced albums for Canadian artists like Sam Roberts and Lights, and part by Rob Baker and Gord Sinclair of The Hip. And we have with us Cam Wyatt and Boris Baker.
How you doing?
Excellent. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
To Kingston Live. And Cam, welcome back to Titan Sound. Cam and I were talking earlier.
It's been a while.
We had a jam years ago that I forgot about that. Yes, so welcome back.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a little deja vu being in this room.
Yeah, it's cool.
Feels good.
I want to start by talking about a lot of people hear about producers, and I don't think they understand maybe what a producer does or why it's important.
I think it can be really different with different producers, but essentially they are like they oversee the whole recording process. So if you guys, like, someone has one idea for a song, like, I think we should take it in this direction, or I think we should take it in this direction. You've got opposing views. They can kind of be the decision maker. So they're the outside opinion, and you're paying them to be there. So you should respect their opinion. So it's like, should we do this or this? And then they just make a call. So we'll do this one, and it really saves time. They also bring like a whole new perspective, so they can really influence it as far as sounds or even like songwriting style. Like they can say, like they just pretty much make suggestions, you know?
One of the most difficult parts about not only being in a band, but recording as well, is everyone has their own influences and how they want to hear the song. So you have 4 kind of creative minds creating one, final sound. And that can be both, I guess, liberating because you have all these influences to create something, but also restricting because everyone wants to hear it a specific way. So they're kind of like the overseeing sort of body that can make the final decisions, and they're kind of who you answer to in terms of what the final sound I think will sound like. So it's really helpful to have someone come in and be like, okay, you have this influence, you want to hear this, and we'll, blend them all together to have this final sound. And I think the person that you answer to, which kind of just really helps the creation process run way more smooth.
And you learn a lot from the producer too.
You do, yeah. Because they also have their own influence as well, and like who they've worked with and everything, and that kind of plays a role in what everything will sound like.
Working with Graham as a producer, he was much more passive in terms of songwriting and way more active in terms of the actual sounds we were getting. When we were working with my dad and Gord Sinclair, we actually went and did pre-production with them before going into the studio, and they just picked apart our songs. Like they would say, this section of the song doesn't make sense, or I think you should add a key change here, or like these lyrics are no good, like go back to the drawing board on that. So they were much more active in the songwriting and kind of structure of the song and less nitpicky about specific tones. Yeah, I guess like all producers are different, so the experience is
for sure
vary.
So you made reference to your dad. Do you want to tell the listener for context who that is?
Yeah, Rob from The Hip. So it was pretty cool getting to work with him. It wasn't like you might imagine working with your dad. No real family feuds.
That's got to be, sorry to interrupt, but that's got to be really different because for you, he's your dad, but Cam, for you, is it intimidating?
Oh, no. I mean, I've known him for a while. I lived at his house for over a year when I didn't have a place to live. So, I mean, we would go down and eat eggs and listen to Beatles albums in the morning every day for like a full year. So I don't know. It's not like, no, it's not intimidating at all anymore. Yeah.
Well, before we move on from talking about the production and creation of the record, you guys recorded at the Bathhouse, which is like one of the quintessential, if you're a Kingston band, you have to record at the Bathhouse. It's such a legendary spot in the Canadian music scene, especially in Kingston. What was that like for you guys?
Oh, it's great. Just getting to like lock yourself in the space for as many days as you book at a time is really awesome. You really get in the zone and you don't stop. The longest stint we did was 10 days, but we did total of 28 days making the album over a couple sessions. And yeah, you just kind of, you get in this headspace, and towards the end you start going a little bit crazy. But yeah, the sound engineer there, Niles, has worked on everything that's been through there in the last 8 years, and he's a genius. He definitely put his stamp on our record.
Yeah, it's kind of like the hidden stamp, because he's at the computer, so every time he records something, he'll be like, you know what, this was buzzing, or do that again. So his name might not necessarily be on it, but like everything that goes through all the sound is like goes through his ear, I guess.
He's also very active, so he will pitch a lot of things. Like I think this effect would be cool, or maybe we should chop up like the lyric or the vocal this way, and then again comes down to the producer saying yes or no.
Yeah, he would just like stay up till like 3 or 4 in the morning. We'll come down the next morning like, yeah, I changed everything. We're like, okay. Like, what do you think of this? We're like, okay, we like some of that, and then we kind of incorporate that into the sound. So there's a lot of different factors that kind of create that final product, and he's definitely one of them. Cool. At the Bathhouse specifically.
So let's talk about the result. There's new music. There's more music on the way. What can we expect in the next little while?
So yeah, we've put out Brood and Bloom and High Rise. Those are kind of the 2 lead-off singles. And so album coming in the fall, September.
Right before
day before Rockin' the Big House. And it's actually going to be exactly 3 years from when we released our EP.
Well, that's some pretty awesome timing between that and the Bathhouse, the Big House, not the Bathhouse. Yes, the
Too
Big
many
House.
houses to talk about.
A lot of houses, yes. So I was going to talk about that too, and I guess we don't really need to promote that show because it's sold out in like a couple of minutes or something. But yeah, you guys get to, at least in the musical sense, I guess, open Kingston Pen. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, that's going to be...
First public show, I think they were saying, ever in the...
Yeah,
Pen?
I don't know what private shows would have been there, but I can only imagine. I guess the prisoners had like their own radio station, didn't they?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't
They
know
mentioned that on like the on the tour, but they never give
actually.
any like details. Like I always want to find out more like what the radio station was called or like find like samples of it or something, but every time they mention it, every time I've taken a tour, they're like that's all we know is that it existed, and they just move on, which makes it like even cooler somehow.
Yeah,
That
like,
may be a
would that have-
future subject for the podcast. You might have to
Yeah,
come
would
back
that
to
have been
that.
broadcast to the public or just other prisons? Like,
I don't know.
Yeah, would that be like
could
a
you
closed
talk
circuit
trash?
kind of thing? Or?
You guys just spearhead this operation of investigation. And
I
figure it
can't
out.
see it going beyond the walls. Like somebody's
Yeah.
sending clues to get broken out of prison.
3
It's just
a.m.
everybody
Thursday.
talking shit about their least
Rear
favorite
entrance.
guard.
Anyway, what were we talking about? Yes, so the big house. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, we're really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
The Trues, the Headstones. Hugh Dillon scares us a bit.
He's a scary guy. Yeah,
He is a scary guy.
Guys are intense.
The guys in the Trues scare us much less. They're very nice people.
I've heard that. Yes, yes.
At the time of recording, you guys are about to go on tour tomorrow, starting tomorrow, and then it'll wrap up around the time this goes, whatever the term is for podcasts
Live?
going out. Yeah.
Before
public?
it's
Yeah,
available.
public. Let's
The
go with
public
that.
is good too. Yes.
Yeah. We were just talking before we started recording about all the steps that you have to take before heading out on tour. And this is a pretty intense tour. You guys are going across Canada and then pretty much on halfway back, right?
Yeah, we just booked a couple on the way back to break up the drive. But we're, as we released Brood and Bloom and High Rise, we wanted to hit a lot of the radio stations out west. And even like it's summer, people don't really want to go to clubs. So we've never been out west. We're doing it largely for the radio and to get a foot in markets. So when we're going back in the fall, it's not our first time. But yeah, there are going to be some pretty intense drives. Like we're going from Kelowna to Regina back to back. And so we're leaving we're leaving from Kelowna after the show at midnight, and we're driving through the night, and we're getting into Regina. I think we have time to make one stop. So we're going to get into Regina at 5 p.m., load into the venue.
Oh my goodness.
Sound check and then nap.
I was going to say, who's driving? Is there going to be like shifts for the driving?
So we are bringing a sound engineer who will take some of the driving responsibilities, but we can't expect him to do it all. So
Well, and
we
he's
are
got to
gonna-
do the sound engineering too. So
yeah, he'll need to be almost as fresh as us.
Almost.
We touched on radio a little bit. I wanted to talk about that because I think something that's different from you guys from the other bands that we've had in here is you guys have radio play and mainstream radio play. How does that happen? How do you get to that point?
Well, in Kingston, before the drive shut
devastating.
down,
It's actually
which
devastating
that has
for us.
been devastating for us.
We're talking in the car how that it just sucks in general, but from a personal like maybe standpoint, it also really especially sucks for us.
It did really take a chunk out of our numbers.
Well, and probably a lot of other people too. And
Yeah.
let's, in an attempt to keep this positive though, because we all missed the drive. I'm curious, what's your reaction to getting airplay? Because mainstream airplay is hard to get, but I feel like it's still important. Like
Yeah.
it's still,
Yeah.
it legitimizes what you're doing to a
It
certain
absolutely
degree.
does. And still, like, even with Spotify and stuff like that, if you're trying to get on a tour as a supporting act, they want your radio play. Like, they want to see that you're getting radio play in Vancouver and Calgary and Edmonton before they send you supporting this band. And they don't really care how many listeners you have on Spotify. They want radio play. So it's been pretty key. And so to get like any play really outside of Kingston, outside of Kingston, Toronto, we've had to hire a radio tracker. So you do have to invest a lot of money in it.
And what is that?
So they kind of I'm sure Riley, you could answer this pretty well, but they pretty much like take your song and is it every 1 or 2 weeks, like,
It depends on the station and the tracker.
so yeah, the stations will have like meetings and like they listen to the new songs, and to get your song in that pile, you usually have to have a radio tracker pushing it.
And it's neat with radio because there's so many ways to get music out there these days. But like I said, it still feels like it legitimizes things, but it also brings the music sort of to a greater audience and becomes part of the public consciousness, I think.
Absolutely. And I think...
and Riley Jabour, you can comment on this too, because this is this is a general sort of statement. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to hear your take, because...
Yeah. Let's interview Riley Jabour.
If you're sitting here and I'm talking...
Let's turn this around.
No, it's really fun for me to hear it from like the artist perspective and stuff, because like for me, like I get when I was with radio, I would get the radio trackers, talking to me about tracks every week or two or whatever, sending me their updates on what's getting played where and wherever, and seeing how it's building. And at least in the case of the drive, it was always, we would look at, there was stations, they call it a panel, so everybody who's playing the same sort of music as you across Canada is on your panel. But then you kind of choose stations on that panel that you like most want to emulate, or that you find you have the most like kinship with, most common ground, and seeing how they are also reacting to the track. And sometimes you're like, oh, of course they're doing this with this song, they're just like us or whatever. Or sometimes you'll be like, why the hell aren't they on this yet? Like, we're bumping the hell out of it. Why aren't these guys playing the same song the same amount? But having a radio tracker kind of to give you track of each song, kind of to keep it on your plate and on your radar, is always really helpful, especially for bands that are trying to break and trying to start that following and cross Canada play and trying to plan out tours and stuff like that.
One thing you mentioned, like the brother or sister stations. One thing that I've struggled with and found really frustrating is there have been a couple stations that they'll feature our song, and they'll feature like once a week, and they come to our show and we play in that city, and they bring us in for interviews, but they won't add the song because another city that's like 300 kilometers away, I'm not going to name cities, but another city that's like a 4-hour drive is not playing the song, like hasn't added it to their rotation. And they're like, well, if you can get them to add it, then we'll add it. And that's a little bit frustrating, but I understand why.
I've never liked this sort of treating like an independent track as sort of a special thing. It's like, I think it really needs to be in regular rotation to really make an impact. And
oh, for sure.
Like treat it, with the same sort of frequency and reverence that you would anybody else who's been around for like 20, 30 years. Yeah.
Absolutely. We're still trying to work our way in.
Yeah.
But shout out to Tyzo, greatest radio tracker.
Yeah, we love Dave.
Yeah. He's a good guy.
Dave is great. It's been a real pleasure working with him.
Let's get back to the album. Tell us more about the album.
This will be our first full-length album. We have the EP that we released almost 3 years ago now. And this is one where we've gone through a lot of changes, be it kind of members of the band, how we want to present ourselves. But I think we finally kind of locked into a image that we want to push. And so we have two singers now. We have me and Will both kind of sing a lead, and we have Steven on drums, who's relatively new for people who may know us for a while. And we've gotten into this kind of like duality theme. So the brood and bloom. So, happy, sad, kind of making things out of negative situations. And as the whole kind of like left, right, duality scene that we've been pushing. And I think you can see that in a lot of like things like our artwork, just the music itself, the lyrics, how the songs are presented. And we've been pushing this sort of overarching theme of this duality in a lot of what we've been doing.
Yeah, I guess like the whole like concept of brood and bloom, like we had it for a while, and we were talking about like, oh, that would be like a great name for a song. And it's really representative of the collection of songs that we have, just in the sense that like they were all about personal struggles, be it like family members dying. We had like a couple deaths of loved ones while we were making the album. Like there's a song on it about addiction. Some of it's about relationships. Some of it's about politics. And like one song's about touring the States very soon after Donald Trump was elected. And another song is just about like the general lack of empathy that people seem to have in the current political climate, which is pretty tough. And just like, it's kind of tough to watch. Like kindness and understanding can go a long way with people. It's seriously lacking right now. So I guess there was like a lot of tough stuff that people in the band experienced, and just as a band, even certain members departing in various ways is never easy. But it was kind of like that, just like turning to each other and it's really tough, but there's nothing we want to be doing other than this. So we're going to make it work. We're going to push through. And we believe that like this is our strongest version of ourselves, and kind of like you deal with the shit and you're better for it. And just kind of applying that, you know, like lost relationships, deaths, addiction, lost friendships, like you can push through it and come out the other side better for it. So that's like kind of the whole Brood and Bloom concept. It's definitely not something that we think ends. Like the whole Brood and Bloom, I feel like it's like a continuous, you go through shit and then you get better, and then you're inevitably going to go through more shit.
Yeah, you find new shit to go through.
Or new shit finds you.
Yeah.
True enough.
You mentioned the artwork for the album, and I always find that is such a fascinating relationship, is like the visual representation of the palette of emotions or whatever's going on with the record. And I really like the cover artwork. I find it's just really striking. How did you land on that, and where did you find it and all that jazz?
The flower skull?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a graphic designer that we've been using for a while.
Who's that?
Colin Sinclair. So he's actually Gord Sinclair's kid, and he's a really great graphic designer. If you're looking for him on Instagram, he's Lemon67.
It's also on a t-shirt that we're getting hopefully today.
Yeah, we are getting some pretty sweet merch designs from him. But yeah, so I guess that one, like that was another one that we found. He had done the piece independent of us. And I found it, and I was really drawn to it, and kind of thought like, oh, that had like the whole duality theme.
Yeah, it's
just
perfect.
it's perfect. And
Yeah.
we're kind of thinking like, oh, well, like after we wrote Brood and Bloom, it was like, we definitely need to use this for that song. Term Brood and Bloom had been sticking around, and that piece of art had been sticking around for about a year before we actually did anything with them. Kind of strange how that happens.
It's perfect duality, just like Brood and Bloom.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that I was really inspired by in that sense was like the whole Gord Downie diagnosis and how the last tour happened. And it was kind of like how something so positive and beautiful and not politically charged, but injected a lot of like energy into native rights. And, you know, like
Yes.
it drew a lot of attention to really worthy causes, but it all came out of something so shitty, like a death sentence. So it's kind of like that is the ultimate shit. It's like getting a death sentence and then choosing to make a lot of positive come from that. I guess like that really does encapsulate the whole like Brood and Bloom.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, there's different ways you could look at that. It's like, okay, this is happening because of something horrible, or something horrible is happening, but there's a positive spin that's being taken because of it.
Exactly. And like that's all up to the person that it's happening to.
Yeah.
It's just like, what are you going to make out of this? And like, I think we're all faced with those decisions. Maybe daily.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we definitely try to inject that kind of duality idea into like not only the songs, and then, like the Brood and Bloom song is like the verses are minor, and then it goes to like a major in the chorus, and the same key, and then or just like that, like actual music, the lyrics themselves, how we present the artwork, how we present ourselves. I think we're just trying to kind of like really drive that home and kind of keep the thematic consistency all throughout the release.
Yeah, it is like kind of a concept album.
I was going to ask. Yeah, it sounds like a concept album.
It's like a loose concept album. Like the Brood and Bloom concept is consistent throughout.
Yeah, I think the more you look into like everything, yeah, like as I mentioned before, lyric, music, you know, visuals, that theme will be present in a lot of different places.
Yeah, I'd say it was like accidentally a concept album. It was kind of like everyone was just writing about their own personal stuff, and
yeah, I think it came pretty organically.
Yeah, it was super organic.
It was kind of like what we were living in, and then that just sort of, you know, life imitates art, and or art imitates life. Oopsie. And yeah,
sometimes
and
both.
Yeah, sometimes both. And I think that really rang true in this particular album, and that just sort of came through and created that theme, which we really decided to run with.
Yeah, yeah, it is definitely just like trying to write about what you know and what you experience.
It's got to be genuine, right?
Yeah, it's got to be genuine, and I feel like if you're writing about what you know, like that has the most chance of connecting with other people,
Absolutely.
as opposed to just trying to like picture what's going to connect with other people. Like just try and connect with yourself, and hopefully some other people connect with it.
Yeah. Cam, Boris, thanks so much for coming in and chatting with us, and be safe on the road.
Thank you.
That's a pleasure.
And we'll see you in prison, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see you there.
All right.
The big house.
So this is the title track from the forthcoming album Brood and Bloom from Kasador on Kingston Live.
Silent battle cry, futures just been open wide, led by self-involved design, tempted by the hand that feeds the pent-up energy. Am I coming undone? No, I'm certain of this one. This is goodbye, but not farewell. It's a risk, but time will tell. Losing all to start anew, with a sense of brood and bloom. Strip back, scratched and torn away, tripping through the easy breaks. Restless stress is in my chest, the tiptoe through my daily steps. I can't keep it all inside, it's cathartic as I sigh. Am I coming undone? No, I'm certain of this one. This is goodbye, but not farewell. And it's a risk, but time will tell. Trapped inside the upstairs room is a sense of brood and bloom. This is goodbye, but not farewell. And it's a risk, but time will tell. Trapped inside the upstairs room, is my sense of brood and bloom.
All set?
Here we
We're
are.
all set here, yes.
Are you set here?
We are good to go.
So I don't know if you know do you know what I do, or do you, like, where are we at with
I
your,
have it
with your
written down
research?
that you are the performing arts manager.
Right.
Well, let's properly introduce you. We're here with Jayson Duggan, as I said, the performing arts manager, and we are on location in the Grand Theater. And every time I come here, I don't get here often enough. I'm always amazed just how beautiful this venue is, and it's just a magical place.
It is, absolutely. You know, when the renovations were done back in 2008, I mean, it was a 3-year renovation process that the facility went through, and as we look around, it still stands the test of time. After it's been 12 years now. It's a really, really special facility, and the artists comment on that all the time. So that's one of the more important points.
Well, and I think what sets it apart is it has history. Like, we always go back to the Leon Center and the Mansion. We talk about the Toucan a lot. Those come up a lot in conversation. But this has been around for like well over 100 years.
It is, yeah, 1902. So there was a previous theater on the site that burned down in the late 1800s, around 1898, I believe. And then the new Grand Opera House, which became the Grand Theater, was rebuilt on the site. And since that time, time, it was around the 30s, actually, we saw a transition into a cinema house. As the rage of motion pictures took over. So the vaudeville design of theaters, as it slipped away, in came the cinema era, and it stayed that way until about the 60s. And then the Grand Theater at that point was considered to be almost the plan was to remove it and put in a parking garage. And the citizens of Kingston rose up, and the city of Kingston purchased the building. There was fundraising done to start the first renovation, and there's been 5 renovations, actually, major renovations since that time. Wow. And the last one being 12 years ago. So it really has a long history and a lot of different phases that it has gone through.
Well, we owe a lot to those folks that have kept it going. That's incredible.
It was a tenuous time in the 60s when we really did almost lose it, and we owe a debt to those citizens that said, no, this is an important part of our community. This is something that we need to have downtown. It needs to be vibrant and active and provide creative opportunities for our citizens. And so thank you to them.
The Grand Theater is very much Kingston's Massey Hall, if you will.
I like that idea, sure.
Yeah, no, it totally is. Yeah, it really, really is. Can you tell me, does it have a reputation beyond Kingston's own borders? Because obviously everyone in Kingston has a memory of the Grand. They all remember the first time they were here, but obviously it brings in so many artists. Do you know, can you tell us, does it carry a reputation?
It does. Certainly we do see a lot of artists coming through. One of the nice things about Kingston is its regional location for what we do. The number of artists that we have, traveling between Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, upstate New York, we've seen a lot of different talent come through, and so the reputation of the building leaves when those artists go back out on the road. And lots of times I'll talk to artists who haven't been to the Grand, but certainly have heard of the facility and heard of the city as a result of that, and that helps me do my job, because it's a lot easier to book artists when they want to come to your city and they want to come to your venue.
There's always something magical every time I'm here, and I think I've commented on this on the podcast before, but artists are so interactive to a degree that you don't see in other venues when they are at the Grand. They can, maybe it's just the layout of it, where they can interact directly with the crowd. I've heard conversations back and forth between artists on stage and people in the crowd, and half the time if you're at another kind of venue, somebody in the background will shout out a song they want to hear, and it goes on deaf ears because they're busy doing their thing. But I can think of at least like 6 examples where I've been here and somebody's like, play X song, and the artist is like, it's coming up, like it's in 3 songs on the set list, chill out for a second. There's some great back and forth, and that I think is one of the most magical things about the Grand Theaters. It's so amazing for that direct interaction with artists as they come through.
Absolutely. I would say that's one of the high points for me in the venue, is that there really isn't a bad seat. Your proximity to the stage itself is incredibly close. So very different experience than if it's an arena performance. It's a very different atmosphere. It's a different connection with the artist that happens. Every seat is like a gold circle seat in this theater, because you are that close to the stage, and that connection is much more immediate. And you see that at every performance, every type of performance that we have, whether it's cirque or dance or music, comedy. I mean, that's another great one that goes over very well, because we're kind of like a large club.
Obviously, our focus is music, and there's a lot to get excited about this season. Matt Mays is going to be here, Rufus Wainwright, Dan Mangan. There's legends like Burton Cummings, Bruce Coburn's going to be here. Tell us about Grand OnStage. This is a really neat, it's going for a while.
It has. So when the theater went through the renovation in 2008, one of the directives coming out of that renovation was that the city wanted to have a presenting program. The mandate and vision being, let's put shows on stage that aren't typically available to our community, may not be touring through Kingston, that we can go out and pursue. When we started the presenting program back in 2008, the whole directive was, let's bring new, fresh, exciting artists that may not have been to Kingston, or they're fan favorites but just haven't been back through the building for whatever reason. And so for us, it really is about, how do we go out and find those key marquee artists, because they help anchor our presenting program. So we sell packages and subscriptions for the first couple of months of on sale. And the reason we do that is maybe somebody purchases really wants Burton Cummings. They want great seats for Burton Cummings. Well, they do have to purchase a package. And what we do is we want to encourage them to maybe they pick up a world music show, or they pick up a dance performance and a comedy show. So we're seeing a lot of the arts programming get elevated by the package purchasing process through the Grand OnStage program. So it's a really unique way to go about programming a facility. We do somewhere around 50 shows, 50 to 60 performances a year in the Grand OnStage program alone, never mind all the rental business that the Grand Theatre does on its own, and the community business, and the dance competitions and recitals. So it's just one pillar of what we do at the Grand Theatre, but it's certainly a big one that the city is very supportive of.
And a lot of opportunity to see some really great performances.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
Certainly, we service a very wide community, a very wide demographic in the community. We have some very passionate dance patrons. Their only focus is what's coming with contemporary dance, or what does the dance program look like, which we're fortunate. Next year we have a very robust dance program. But I also have those fans that just want, the Classic Albums Live program is a great example. Classic Albums Live, they recreate classic albums note for note, cut for cut. They come in and do, next year we are doing the Abbey Road 50th anniversary of the Beatles album, which I know will do very, very well. And we're doing Led Zeppelin 3, I believe, next year as well. So, we don't typically do tribute or those types of shows in our program, but that particular show is really highly regarded by our subscribers, and they want to attend those Classic Album Live shows. So they do very well, and those patrons may or may not be interested in some of the other programming we have. But the idea is we hope that by having those patrons come into the hall, maybe they see something else in the brochure that they wouldn't typically resonate with them, but by drawing them in through Classic Albums Live or Lighthouse or Burton Cummings, we start to see other programs get purchased by the patrons.
That is one of my favorite things about taking in a show at the Grand is you often see those people who maybe they buy the tickets for Burton Cummings or any of the dance acts, something that is in their usual wheelhouse. And then sometimes you see them at shows that you can tell they're just like, let's go outside of my comfort zone for a second. You'll see folks who are seeing Mother here that you wouldn't see them at a Mother show at the Ale House, something like that. Do you get a lot of feedback from those patrons, people who...
I do.
Go between different, explore their musical horizons?
Yeah, I love that part of my job. I'm here for pretty much every presentation we have on the stage. So I like to stand in the lobby, talk to our subscribers and the patrons as they come through the doors. And usually that's where a lot of my programming ideas do get generated as well, because I love feedback. I need feedback. I can't work in a bubble. And so it's often surprising me what some of the suggestions are from patrons, where even for myself, I kind of go, I'm surprised to hear you say that, you're interested in this artist when I know you're an avid dance fan, but there's a unique pop artist or something that you really have been dying or wanting to see. It's not like why don't we have the Rolling Stones? It's kind of really great suggestions about Canadian artists. Our patrons are very interested in Canadian talent, and that's where a lot of the suggestions come for the program. So I love that interaction.
So someone's interested in subscribing with Grand OnStage. What's the biggest advantage?
For sure, access to the best seats. Is number one. You get first shot at seating. Secondly is the exchange program, which is really one of the strongest benefits that we have. That means that up to 24 hours prior to your performance, you can basically turn in your ticket and select another performance. So if something comes up, your plans change, because we're asking people when they purchase a package, you're buying shows into next April potentially. And so we understand that things change in life. And so if you're a subscriber, no problem. You can exchange for another show in the season at a different date that you can attend. Discount ticketing is also another big perk of being a subscriber. A lot of our performing arts programs have various ticketing pricing tiers and discounts for purchasing for more shows. And also there's at the beginning of the year, there's a gift bag for all of our subscribers. So it creates a very personal experience. We want people to have...
Lots of flexibility too.
The flexibility and people's connection to the theater. It's not just come in, see a show, disappear. We truly want people to build a warmth and a sentiment around the building itself, that this is where they're coming for their entertainment. This is where they're coming for, the educational programming that we offer, some of the engagement options that we have around shows. We want it to be more than just a transactional experience for the Kingston community.
So much talent has come through these doors. Are there any acts that people would be surprised to know came through here?
I think that maybe the big one is Harry Houdini.
Really?
So, yeah. So Al Jolson, Sarah Bernhardt. So some of the early sort of 30s and earlier talent that was out touring at that time, because there was a touring circuit. But that was the one that kind of sort of shocked me or surprised me a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the list is probably much longer, and I wish we had that data, because I think it would be very fascinating. It is for me, definitely, like those early years, like who was actually out on the road and doing the venues. At the time that the Grand was built, certainly in the early 1900s, it was state-of-the-art vaudeville venue. It really was spectacular, and I sort of probably one of the best in Canada at the time. So I'm not surprised. It's quite a long list of the who's who of who was out on the road at that time. Probably Kingston was part of the touring circuit. I would think so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would think if they're especially playing Montreal and Toronto, Kingston at that time would have been the only stop really on the way between. So I bet you a lot of things came through here that none of us are aware of that would shock us.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you both. We talk about, sort of the memories of this place. What's your fondest memory of a performance at the Grand Theatre?
The one that stands out for me as one of my favorite memories at the Grand Theatre has to be, and I know he's come through a few times, so I can't remember which year it was, but Matt Good was performing here. Yeah. And he is just such I talk so much about the banter on stage. He's such a good talker with any audience, and I've seen him in a few different venues in a few different cities, but he had such a great interaction with the crowd, and it was also like he just trotted out his guitar tech for no particular reason, just brought him on stage and started talking about the history of his guitar tech, who had played with like Chuck Berry at points in his life. Yeah, his guitar tech is much older than he is.
Right.
And there was just this great interaction with the crowd. And one moment that will always stick with me was at one point during the set, someone near like the front right of the audience got up, and it's dark. He tripped over a shoelace or something. He fell down, and mid-song, Matt Good stops playing and just kind of trots over to the side of the stage, and it's so well laid out acoustically that even without mics, you could hear him going, "Sir, are you okay? Do you need a hand? Can anybody give you assistance?" And I mean, I felt bad for the guy because he was clearly quite embarrassed, but he's like, no, I'm fine, whatever, got up and kept going. And then they just went back into the song. And I think just those organic moments where it just feels so real that's what always draws me in here.
Right. Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah, it's true. And it happens a lot. Because you don't want to see something that's prepackaged, right? You want to see something that has that special connection to what's happening here that night, as opposed to just a show that comes through and it's the same in every city. And you want those artists to also have that connection with the audience, so when they leave, they have a memory as well, so they can think back, that show in Kingston, right? The audience was great, or whatever the experience was. For me, it really is difficult. I mean, because I do go to every show that we present, and I've been here 8 years now, so it's been a lot of performers that have come through. Sometimes I see shows, and the level of talent on the stage is so remarkable that I start to actually kind of laugh to myself, because it's unbelievable. We just had, it happens just all the time. But Lisa Fisher was just here. Lisa Fisher was the backup singer for the Rolling Stones for well over 20 years. She's a Grammy Award-winning vocalist, remarkable singer. And she brought a group of musicians, that may not have been easily name recognizable, but when I saw them play that night, it was by far probably one of the highest level of musicianship I've ever seen on stage. And I often will be in the theater and out of the theater because I have to do, I do paperwork during the night as the show's going on. So I'm often back in the office, and so I will go in and out. It was very hard for me to pull myself away from that show, because I just realized what was being experienced that night doesn't come around that often. So it was really kind of unique for me. And again, because I didn't know who the musicians were, it was even better, because I was just like, wow, this is such a wonderful surprise. But the other thing would be certainly some of the higher marquee artists. So no doubt being able to stand side stage and watch Gordon Lightfoot, perform a Carefree Highway, or Tom Cochrane, Life is a Highway, or there's a trend building here, but certainly when you see some of those iconic moments, just because of their marquee value in our pop culture life, and I watch the faces of the audience, I think that's where I get my charge, because it's just, there's been so many of those. And when I see some of the quality and the level of that work, I mean, they're playing major markets around the world, and when I can see them here on our stage and I bring them for our community, I really hope that the people also have that response that I do when I watch those shows. Something special is happening. So
one of the moments that stands out in memory for me, it was probably over 10 years ago, I saw Colin James here. And at one point, he was just tearing into this huge guitar solo, and he jumped off the stage and started walking up the aisle. And he actually stopped like right beside us, still playing this guitar solo. And it was just so exciting. And then he started walking back, and he couldn't find his way back onto the stage. But he didn't miss a beat the whole time. He was still playing this amazing solo while trying to find his way back.
We're through the maze.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was so Spinal Tap.
Yeah. Yeah, it's when those moments happen, those are what make shows memorable. And I think what I like to think what we do is we create the opportunity for memories when we do what we do here.
Totally.
And that's what, ideally we want people to leave having an experience that is memorable and that they can recall and talk to their friends about, and 10 years down the road go, we were at the Grand Theater and we saw this. And because we want the theater to be a place that our community goes, hey, what's happening at the theater this weekend? Your ultimate goal is that people, it's not even necessarily what's on stage, because they know the quality is going to be exceptional. Certainly that's our aim with the Go program, is that any show in here, we stand behind. We've vetted it. We've seen it. We've done our research on it, whatever the case is. If it's a Go program and you've never heard of the group before, why not come down and just take a risk? Because you may be very pleasantly surprised, and that's usually the case that happens with our community. So that's important to us.
Jayson, thank you so much for letting us in and talking with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we do behind the curtain.
And for more on the Grand OnStage season and to subscribe, go to kingstongrand.ca.
August 9th and 10th, Voodoo Rock Fest going down in Napanee. Days of Thieves, our friends, Goldwing, and tons more all performing.
Lots of tribute acts, lots of stuff going on. The same weekend, August 9th and 10th, Wolf Island Music Festival.
August 12th, The Lucky Ones taking over Musiikki.
August 16th, Empty Nesters and Deux Trois at the Mansion.
Also August 16th at the Grand Theater, you've got the Michael Jackson History Show.
August 19th, Back to the Farm. It's sold out, so almost not worth mentioning, but probably worth mentioning. I believe we will be there and hopefully talking to some people. More on that later.
Yeah, if you're going to be there and you see us, swing by, say hello, because it is going to be a great time. And that's one of my favorite things about that festival. There's great music, there's great beer, but there's also just great socializing. You just run into people and you hang out and have a pint or whatever, and then you go watch an amazing act. It's great.
We'll be making some friends.
Yes.
August 19th.
August 22nd, Limestone City Blues Festival going down downtown. That's the easiest way to describe it. It's all over the place.
Everywhere downtown. September 14th, as we mentioned earlier, Rockin' the Big House. Our friends Kasador will be there, along with everybody else. The Trues, Headstones, Tom Cochran. It's going to be a big deal.
September 21st, Justin Rutledge at the Grad Club.
September 21st as well, big show, another big show. The Glorious Sons are at Richardson Stadium.
September 28th, Rufus Wainwright is at the Grand Theater.
And all the fun summer stuff that's happening on a regular basis. Music in the Park happens Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, 12:30 at Confederation Park.
Downtown Country is going down Thursdays at 7 o'clock at Confederation Park.
Also Thursdays at Pan Chancho, the Backyard Barbecue series continues. We've got Chris and Dee and Kasador and a bunch of others this month.
Every Thursday night, there's campfire songs at the McLaughlin Woodworking Museum.
Big Band Fridays, 7 p.m. at Market Square.
The biggest bands. Sounds on Sydenham Saturdays at 1 between Princess and Queen.
And Firebird Sessions. It's live jazz at Musiikki, Sunday afternoons this summer, and more on that in just a moment.
Tuesdays are open mic night at Musiikki. Musiikki and Jazz Night at Olivea.
Wednesday is open mic night at the Rose and Crown with Tom Savage.
Chris Jackson and friends every Friday night at Blue Martini.
Craig Jones and the 20th Century Jazz Band every Friday at Monty's.
Live music at the Toucan every Friday and Saturday night with no cover at all. That made it sound like they're naked. You don't have to pay to enter the building is what I mean.
For details on these events and others, along with lots of other things to do, places to eat, places to stay in Kingston, check out visitkingston.ca.
We are in the gorgeous courtyard of Musiikki Café with the founder and host of Firebird Sessions. It's Selina Chiarelli. Did I say that right this time?
That's correct.
Yes. So for anybody who's unfamiliar with Firebird Sessions, give us a brief description of what it is, because this is such a unique event.
Yeah, so the Firebird Sessions is an exploration on women's artistic expression. It's a look at how women can take ownership of artistic expression, and what we're doing with the Firebird Sessions is using jazz as the medium for that. So it's a what I've been saying is succinctly as possible is that it's a female-forward jazz jam and concert.
And you've used in a few different times, you've used the phrase ownership of female expression through music and through jazz. What does that mean in broader terms? Like, can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea behind the ownership of female expression, as artists, women are, we're all encouraged as artists, men and women, to explore where we want to go, what we want to express, and how we want to do that. I think that by taking ownership of our own expression, it means that we are releasing ourselves from certain, let's say, unspoken factors that might hold us back or might constrain us to certain aesthetics, especially in jazz. And as a vocalist for myself, I've spent a lot of my life feeling like I have to sound a certain way, feeling like I have to sing a certain way, feeling like I have to choose a certain repertoire, speak in a certain way within songs. Do I say he? Do I say she? Do I change the gender? Do I change this? But also in terms of how we sound, a lot of the time, I personally, and I'm saying this for myself, and it's not necessarily true for everyone, because there are certainly women that have gone beyond, but for a long time, I felt that I had to sound beautiful and great and lovely. And maybe that meant singing in a higher register. Maybe that meant when I scat, sounding a certain way, or when I improvise. I don't even like the term scatting, because it implies certain styles of singing that someone like Esperanza Spalding, for example, says, I hate scatting. It's not scatting. It's just making music with your voice. So, yeah, it's really about kind of sloughing off those boundaries and those restrictions that are imposed upon us, and trying to find a space where we feel comfortable enough to do some weird stuff, like get funky with it,
I love that. We're sitting in the Musiikki courtyard. It is one of Kingston's best kept secrets. Was this always the destination for Firebird Sessions?
What happened with Firebird Sessions is that I was offered a residency myself. And Liam, the amazing, lovely booker here at Musiikki, said, hey, you know what? Take the Sunday afternoons. And I was like, cool, that sounds awesome. And then a few things happened that just sort of reminded me that that's not an easy thing to achieve. A residency specifically as a female performer in Kingston, there have been some legendary ones. You've got huge residencies that have happened over the past few decades. Emily Fennell, Georgette Fry, all of these institutions that existed. But just sort of the day-to-day, recent things, and especially within jazz, it's not something you see. To be fair, there's also a dearth of jazz venues as well. We don't have very many of them in Kingston, so the few we have don't often have residencies, and when they do, they're occupied and carefully guarded, So when they offered me that, I thought, well, wouldn't that be kind of cool to create an opportunity for women to sort of explore this? And it was through some discussions with one of my partners now in sort of helping to get Firebird Sessions moving in another direction is Chantal Thompson, who's a jazz singer. She's being featured on July 14th, actually, but that will be after this. But she'll also be co-hosting sometimes during August. And and she and I discussed this idea of what a residency creates for us. So, and Musiikki, because of it being a secret, like a beautiful, comfortable space, it's an enclosed courtyard. So if you do have kids like me, you can take them to gigs and they can't get away. So bring your babies. It's really wonderful to see them sort of running around and doing things. And it really does keep it small enough that you're comfortable, that you're not overexposed, but big enough that you are inspired and also, dappled light and a magnolia tree overhanging your performance is pretty magical.
100%.
Yeah.
Jazz can be a really intimidating genre for like anybody, including performers, but even for people who are just trying to explore it as like fans. What would be your suggestions or your advice to anybody who's A, trying to like learn jazz just as a fan to understand it a little bit more, and B, for anybody who is trying to become a jazz musician and wants to get involved in Firebird Sessions and anything like that?
So I've been having these conversations with a lot of women who are saying, "Oh, I love playing saxophone, but oh my God, I'm not a jazz player," or I love drumming, but I'm not a jazz drummer." And it is a different thing because there's a certain level of technical skill and a certain level of creativity and improvisational skill that has to be adhered to, I suppose, to an extent. The one thing that's safe about jazz is that we have standards. If you want to appreciate jazz, just start listening for the melody and just keep following that melody, no matter where anyone else goes. So if you're listening to someone do an incredible solo that just sounds like it's going everywhere, remember that you start with the melody. And that melody is usually pretty easy to remember if you keep listening carefully. And it keeps you attuned if you're willing to take the time to listen. So maybe that's it. And what I say to people that are maybe intimidated to get up and start is that you have to start somewhere. We have a plethora of amazing jazz musicians that are here in Kingston, and I'm not going to name them off, but they have had ample opportunity to explore and to practice and just to get up and make mistakes and do all the things, like sound like idiots sometimes, go off. I personally am making the effort of sounding like an idiot as often as possible in my singing. When I'm trying to host and do my first set, I'm trying to go places where I'm not so comfortable so that I can make mistakes, so people can see that, hey, it's okay to do that.
So you started Firebird Sessions in around mid-May, right?
Yeah, so it started. I think the first official one was at the very end of May, or no, the second last weekend in May.
What ways have you seen it grow, and where do you want to kind of see it grow next?
Oh, I've seen it grow so much. I have to say that there have been very few Firebird Sessions that we've done so far that haven't made me get into my car after everything is done and I've packed up all the gear and just dropped off whoever I needed to drop off and just cry a little. Just a little cry. Sometimes it's happened on stage and I'm fine with that. I just let it happen because it's really beautiful to see people feel empowered and comfortable enough to go somewhere that they haven't before and then to feel proud of that effort. It's just, I mean, it's magical. So that's where I've seen it grow. What I've seen happen is that, I mean, barring a few very eventful weekends like the Skeleton Park Arts Fest, it was hard to get a crowd out. But we had some amazing things happen here, and because there was a smaller crowd, maybe some things happened that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Seeing that crowd build, being stopped on the street by women saying, "I haven't made it yet, but I'm so glad you're doing this," that just it just gives me goosebumps. What I'd like to see happen is to see Firebird Sessions expand into a Firebird initiative, and there's a tentative event happening that might happen in the fall in October. With the sessions themselves, I'd like to take them to other cities as well. So I'm looking at venues in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and I'm flirting with Vancouver because I have a wonderful guest coming in from Vancouver. And so just to see if there are other places that we could do that where you can take this format and bring it to other spots and maybe even showcase some Kingston talent.
That was full of great teasers. I can't wait to see who you've got coming in from Vancouver.
I can tell you that.
Okay.
Actually, it's Jody Prosnick. She's coming in on August 18th. She's amazing, Juno Award nominee, and she's in for the PEC Jazz Fest, which you should go and see. And then she'll be doing a small stint and a small feature spot and a Q&A. She's a bassist, and she's recently written an incredible album in collaboration. And she has Lila Bialy singing lyrics. So Lila Bialy is the one that won the Juno. She's may or may not pass through. We're not sure about her. She's very busy. But we've started conversations on social media that are in private groups to allow women to start talking about things. And I am so excited and proud that there have been so many artists that of note, like Chelsea McBride, Lila Bialy, like Jody Prosnick, like Susie Arioli, all of these women that have had huge amounts of success within the jazz scene in Canada, and they've all joined this group in the hopes that we can start that conversation and a more unified level.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Firebird Sessions every Sunday here at the Musiikki Courtyard
3 to
all
5
summer long,
p.m.
3 to 5 p.m.
I'll give you just the structure. So it always opens with the host. So right now I'm generally the host unless someone else steps up here and there. I think Chantal is taking 1 or 2 of those. And then there's a featured guest that usually is announced on the Friday because it's more fun. And then the jam sort of starts at around 4:15, and women are invited to come, watch, participate. It's not exclusive. I do have guys in my band. I've got Alec Barkin and Oscar Evans and Nicholas Lennox from the Wilderness, like amazing. And then Caroline Kwok is my incredible support, and we both stand up here side by side and do the thing. 3 to 5 every Sunday.
Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you.
This has been Kingston Live. We encourage you to rate us on your listening platform of choice and subscribe where possible. Kingston Live was recorded in Kingston at Titan Sound. Hosted by John Sanfilippo and Riley Jabour. Writing and research by Peter Sanfilippo. Executive producer Rob Howard. A big thanks to the support of our friends at Tourism Kingston who helped make this podcast possible. Check out the latest live music listings and many other experiences the city has to offer at visitkingston.ca. We'd love to hear from you. Email your thoughts, ideas, comments to podcast@kingstonlive.ca.